Two, they give us our oxygen and they give us fresh water. The Worldwide Fund, or WWF, every year notes that the deficits we have accumulated in the use of Mother Nature will require us to have two worlds in order to support our population. But we do not have two worlds. So what happens is that the rich populations in the world consume more than the poor. The rich people live in cities and wealthy countries and leave a massive ecological footprint in poorer countries. Singapore is one example of that. In our city-state, we import 90% of all our tomatoes from Cameron Island. 90% of all our chilled pork comes from Australia. 60% of all our frozen pork comes from Brazil. And we import all this food to waste it. 670,000 tons of food was wasted in 2015. As my grandmother would say, we always take more food than we can eat. And she would tell us, you have eyes bigger than your stomach. It's disturbing to see how when you go to buffet lunches and dinners, people will heap tons of food on their plate only to waste it. This is one kiasu behavior we should stop immediately. We should eat in moderation. Health is wealth. We live in a world where consumerism has become norm. We are basically a product of our newer rich behavior and conspicuous consumption. But don't forget, we grate on the nerve of all the poor neighbors that live around us. My mother was a product of World War II and the best testimony of family conservation. She kept everything in the house, from rags to strings, plastic bags, and newspapers. One night at dinner, I told her, are you trying to convert my home into a garden house? She was very upset. She said, climate change is a product of our consumerism, energy use, and abuse of the way we use Mother Earth. Skeptics say climate change is a natural phenomenon. But we have to believe the scientific community. And 2,500 scientists cannot be wrong when they say climate change is a product of human activities. James Lovelock, the creator of the Gaia theory, says that global warming is a sign that Mother Earth has a fever. The question is whether that fever represents a terminal illness or just about a flu. Hence, we have to accept the scientist's definition of our new geological age, which started in the mid-19th century, and we call it the Anthropocene, the age of human beings. We are the greatest shapers and engineers of our changing ecosystems, the desecration of our environments, the pollution of our landscapes, and even the altering of our climate. Tim Flannery, the scientist who wrote this fantastic book on climate change, says, we have become now the climate makers. No need to look elsewhere. Climate change is such a powerful variable that numerous revisionist historians have noted the fall of many civilizations as a result of prolonged drought. My second important statement on environment has to do with mass extinctions. Elizabeth Colbert wrote a book in 2014 called The Sixth Extinction. She noted that in the 500,000 history of the Earth, there were 5 major extinctions in the world, in which 80% of all organisms died in each of those extinctions. All the 5 major extinctions were a result of natural phenomena. But we are now the 6th mass extinction of organisms on Earth. And this time, human beings are likely to be one of the species that will be eliminated on Earth. Human beings have become the culprits of their probable extinction. You might think this is impossible. We are, after all, the most intelligent organism, with adaptable cultures, sound social systems, and political organizations. Well, the Japanese anthropologist Shinji Imanishi, some 60 years ago, predicted the extinction of the human race. He argued that in the history of the Earth, there was always a dominant master species that ruled the Earth. For example, who could have imagined that the dinosaurs the master species of the Jurassic could become extinct. But they did, and so will human beings. Why? We might be intelligent organisms, but we are also organisms who are products of greed, avariciousness, power, a competition, spirit, pride, irrational behavior, emotions, passions, and a cumulative disposition. Unfortunately, the economic system of capitalism drives our worst behavioral emotions and passions. We all want to be rich, powerful, and materially well off. Our cumulative and acquisitive behavior, however, is not innate in us. It is not in our DNA. Look at Richard Lee's famous work on the Kumbhisham of the Kalahari Desert. They are a non-material band of hunters and gatherers. Let me remind you, hunters and gatherers rule the world for 99% of human history. In an interesting anecdote in the book, he says, at Christmas, I gave all the band members, about 18 of them, a little Christmas present. And within 2 to 3 hours, they threw away all the presents. Because they are a non-material society. Why would they want a present to carry with them? What drives then our material and accumulative culture? Well, the theologian Andrew Schumacher, in his book, The Parable of the Tribe, argues that the human agricultural revolution began a journey of uncharted waters in social evolution and civilization. Agriculture created in us the material, acquisitive, social status and quest for power in human society. This quest for material wealth and economic power is evident in capitalism. The French economist Georges Piketty, in his recent book on capitalism, argues what capitalism creates is vast disparities of wealth. He notes that the greatest disparity of wealth, this was 1.5 centuries of his research, took place in the 1910s. And what followed in that greatest disparity of wealth in the Western world was the First World War, the Great Depression, the Second World War, and extermination of the Jews, which were the symbol of wealth in Europe at that time. Will these human tragedies happen again? No one knows. But in a globalizing world, the tragedy of material accumulation, wealth, power, and greed will be colossal. Added to the competition of resources and wealth is the global competition between states. We are not a global community. We are members of 190 states, which act as brands, Singaporean, British, Americans, Japanese, Chinese, who are all competing for natural resources, energy, precious materials, and water in a finite world. We have not come to terms with sharing a global common pool of resources. We have never developed a commonwealth of humanity based on human compassion, understanding, cooperation, and sustainable living. When I see the mass refugee problems, it recalls the social demographer Garrett Hardin's work some 30 years ago, when he said the developed world are living in lifeboats, and all around them are the developing world who are poor and are refugees. His prescription that time, 30 years ago, was the developed world should practice triad, save only the few savable people, and let the rest perish. His argument that if you try complete justice, you will have a situation where everybody will drown. I might add that in part 2 of this chapter, even the lifeboats will capsize, and that's where we are today. Look at all the refugee problems all around the world. So what's the way forward? Harmonian, quantitative, mathematical, calculative, and prescriptive science that deconstructs nature into atoms and elements, and into a science of Goethe, which tries to understand the phenomenology of nature holistically through both the human senses and intuitively. In Goethe's scientific prescription, we need to see nature and Gaia organically. Goethe thus allows all parts of nature to speak for themselves. We have come full cycle to see a marriage of Western science and Eastern philosophy.